Trixie's Forest Retreat. By Crow's Crow. Chapter 91. Rapids. To Trixie, time had lost its meaning. She wasn't sure how long she'd been here, sharing a blanket with Rainbow Dash on the shore of Saddle Lake. Which was apparently what it was called, if Dash could be trusted to identify such things. What she did know, was that she loved every minute of it. Curled up against one another, they talked, fought and joked around about things big and small. Trixie's favorite part was hearing Dash telling her about some of her best stunts and how she planned to improve them. The sheer enthusiasm in the mare's voice was invigorating. Though Trixie didn't actually understand much of the technical terms Dash used, she got the gist of it enough to ask a question on occasion without sounding like a complete moron, or so she hoped. In return, Trixie elaborated on her show, detailing some of her more successful performances. Of course she added the necessary bit of flair to the tale where appropriate, but enhancing the truth a little bit was absolutely not the same thing as lying, or so she assured herself while doing her best to impress Dash. And that is when they presented Trixie with the key to the city. Only a little bit. Rolling her eyes, Dash just nodded. Yeah, I think I heard about that. She glanced towards Trixie with a soft grin. Trixie felt a hot flash sear through her. Oh, of course. It was the talk of South Equestria. Just South Equestria? Dash asked, the grin on her face growing. That's pretty modest coming from you. I guess it wasn't a big deal, huh? Glaring at Dash, Trixie levitated a globe of water out of the lake, then hovered it above them threateningly. Either you drop it, or Trixie will. You're threatening me with water? Really? Dash let out a mocking laugh, but paused when a single note rung through the air, causing her to look towards a nearby hill. Whoa, is it time already? Trixie recognized the sound as a pitch pipe, but she wasn't sure why Rainbow Dash would care about it at all. Time? Don't tell Trixie you are a musician, Dash. As far as Trixie knew, pitch pipes were only intended as a reference for musicians, not as some kind of signal. A regular whistle was much more effective for that. Giving Trixie a look of surprise, Dash shook her head. Nah, but you are right that it's for musicians, or well, singers really. As if on cue, a deep, harmonious voice rolled over the hill, soon joined by three others in order of pitch. Trixie's ears perked up involuntarily to listen to the sound. It was surprisingly beautiful. Is that an a cappella quartet? Trixie hasn't heard one of those in. She paused briefly to consider, but once she remembered, it didn't sound quite as good as she planned. Actually it was just a year ago, but still, those are pretty rare. A what? I mean, yeah that. Dash chuckled and nudged Trixie's shoulder, then pointed up. Trixie, do you mind? It's getting kinda close. Disgruntled to be shaken out of the spell the melodious tones put her under, Trixie gave Dash an impatient glance. Huh? What? She looked up at the mass of water that slowly drifted dangerously close ever since she lost focus. Oh that, yes. She let the water flow higher into the air absent-mindedly while she listened. It wasn't her favorite kind of music, but it was the first she had heard in months. Meanwhile, Rainbow Dash filled her in on a few details. They are called the pony tones. They come here to practice. Well, usually it's on Fridays, but one of their members couldn't make it that day so they moved it this week. Do you like it? Trixie does, she all but whispered reverently, afraid to disrupt the music in the air. It was not a song she was familiar with, but it was catchy. With a smile, Trixie considered how appropriate it was to find the music out in the middle of nowhere. She stared at the hill where the sound came from. Apparently the quartet was on the other side. Trixie regretted not being able to see the singers, but at the same time she was grateful for being spared the trouble of hiding as two of those voices sounded familiar. Dash smiled. Her eyes didn't leave the spellbound Trixie. If you like, we can check them out next week too. I guess they'd be back at the park then though. Barely sparing a glance, Trixie replied. At the park? Yeah, There's a wooden thing there, I dunno, a gazelle or something. Gazebo. Trixie chuckled softly, feeling a slight headache that she attributed to Dash's silliness. Yeah. That. It's where they usually practice at, I think. It was taken so they came here. Dash paid little attention to the singing herself, apparently more interested in Trixie's reaction. With the music distracting her, Trixie did not think too much on it. A false note made Trixie winch, and the singing died down. She could faintly hear some pony speaking, but she couldn't make out what it was about. Well, that's a shame. Wait, what did Dash say? Tilting her head, Trixie looked towards Dash. She knew suspiciously much about these pony tones. Do they normally practice at this time too? I dunno. Dash shrugged and reached for the picnic basket, pulling out a quarter-full bottle of grape juice. I guess they probably do. Taking a swig, she offered the bottle to Trixie. Trixie raised an eyebrow. Surely Dash did not think she was a fool. So, you are telling Trixie they would normally practice on a different day, in a different place. That you have no idea when they practice. And they just happen to be here at the same time we are. That's quite the coincidence. She mused aloud while she took the bottle from Dash, downing the remainder. Looking nervous, Dash put on a cheesy grin. Yeah. Her eyes darted to the hill as the singing started up again, a look of relief on her face. Clearly she thought Trixie would back off and start enjoying the music again. However, Trixie was not about to do any such thing. Though she was not clear on what kind of trick Dash had used for this, it was obvious this was somehow part of her plan. Tossing the bottle aside, she set her hoof against Dash and gently toppled her over. Trixie continued on to pin Dash down to the blanket, allowing Trixie to tower over her. What do you take Trixie for? You think Trixie is fooled by this facade? You secretly are romantic. Either Dash was too surprised to resist, or she didn't mind having Trixie on top of her. What? No. I'm not. She grinned up at Trixie with confidence. Why, whatever could you be talking about? Trixie rolled her eyes. Fine, be like that, but do not think Trixie will let you get away with this merely because you feign ignorance. The great and powerful Trixie will not be deceived. She jabbed an accusatory hoof at Dash, narrowing her eyes. Trixie's on to you. Smirking, Dash let her gaze travel to Trixie's hoof on her chest. Well, you are definitely on me. Relaxing below Trixie, Dash folded her hooves under her head to get more comfortable, perking up her ears to listen to the singing. Her eyes briefly darted away from Trixie to look past her, then settled back. Hey, Trixie. Remember that thing with your horn? What about it? Her face flushed. Trixie most certainly did remember the time Dash tried to get a taste of her horn, completely oblivious to what that meant to a unicorn until Trixie told her and made Dash back off. Of course, that had been before they were dating. Still, this was much sooner than Trixie expected to return to it. It just got me thinking. I don't really know much about unicorns, she said coyly, but then let the volume of her voice drop while leaning up closer to Trixie, nearly whispering. So, you'll have to teach me, sometime. A tingling feeling ran along Trixie's spine as she did her very best to remain calm and collected, which was not helped by her racing heart causing a pounding feeling in her head. So sure. This was perfectly normal, right? There was nothing wrong with sharing some information of that nature with her friend. It didn't mean they would act on it straight away, even Dash wasn't that fast. Thanks, so, first of all, I was wondering. She looked past Trixie again. What's it mean when a unicorn's aura is flashing? What does? What? Trixie blinked. She supposed that by now she ought to be used to things not going quite as expected. Well. It usually means a unicorn is overexerting themselves. It is pretty common among young unicorns that don't have much magic power yet. The best Trixie could liken it to is your muscles getting shaky when you reach your limit. It's like that. Dash nodded, still not looking at her. I get it. So does that mean we're about to get what? Trixie tilted her head, puzzled. Huh? Though she did not mind answering questions, the silly cryptic follow-up annoyed her, and she became acutely aware of the headache that had been gradually growing the past few minutes. Ugh, stupid questions giving Trixie a... She froze, and tentatively tilted her head up towards the sky. Oh no. The large globe of water was still hovering right above them, surrounded in rapidly flickering orchid glow. Trixie had completely forgotten about it. No, no, no. Trixie's mane is finally dry. With the last of her magic, she tried to force the globe to move just a few meters in any direction, but all she succeeded in doing was shattering the delicate, already unstable, magic that held it. Frightened, Trixie's ears folded flat against her scalp as she watched the water plummet out of the sky. With only half a second to react, all she could think to do was bury her face in Dash's chest fur. Splash. Before today, Trixie did not think there would have been much of a difference between heavy rainfall and falling water. She was wrong. It was like falling into a pool in reverse. From one moment to the next, she felt a borderline painful impact, and was suddenly submerged in cold water. It lasted barely a second, then it was all gone, leaving her drenched from tail to shoulder. Shoulder? It was strange. The globe above them had definitely been big enough to cover her completely. Carefully, Trixie opened one eye, and flinched when all she saw was blue. Wait, that's not water. She recognized them now, the soft cyan feathers that enveloped her. The sunlight returned when Dash's wings unfurled, shifting downward to Trixie's back, bringing the rest of the world back into view. First the sky, then the trees, and finally Dash herself, still in the same careless position she'd been in a second ago. However, her face, unlike Trixie's, was completely soaked. When Trixie made eye contact, Dash tried to speak, but coughed up water instead. Hacking and coughing, she finally forced a few words out. I wish my wings were bigger. It was obvious to Trixie that Dash had shielded her from the torrent, taking the brunt of it herself. Trixie shivered at the thought that all that water already stung a bit when it hit her back. She didn't want to imagine getting hit in the face with it. You are such a fool. It cemented just how right Trixie was to put her trust in Dash. She really could depend on Dash to come through for her, even though so far it often meant Dash putting herself in harm's way instead. In the grand scheme of things, being spared a little splash in the face wasn't really that big of a deal. But the gesture still warmed Trixie to the core. As Trixie thought about it, she came to realize why. In a way, this was much more significant. There was little doubt that Rainbow Dash was a brave and loyal pony that would quickly put her own life at risk to save that of another. So brave, that she would do it for any pony, just because it was the right thing to do. This, however, was trivial. There was no danger, no right thing to do. Dash herself had done worse things on occasion in good fun. There was no reason for Dash to act, but she simply did it because she cared that much for her. Trixie? Are you okay? An anxious voice asked. Trixie snapped out of it, suddenly aware she'd been lost in thought. Blushing, Trixie looked down at Dash. Perhaps it was that Dash always looked a bit disheveled to begin with, but she pulled off the drowned cat look well. Above all, Dash wore such a caring expression, one that usually went hidden under that much more familiar teasing grin. Before Trixie quite realized what she was doing, she had already leaned down and locked lips with her. Closing her eyes, Trixie decided she may as well go with her subconscious decision-making. It clearly knew what she really wanted to do better than she did. Feeling especially adventurous, Trixie teased the tip of her tongue along Dash's moist lips. To her delight, Dash caught on quickly, responding to the gentle coaxing by granting Trixie access. It was as though there was a flame spreading through her whole body. Trixie had read about these kinds of kisses more than she dared to admit. The prance kiss. The memory of the first one she ever experienced was still so fresh in her mind she could remember the taste. They'd briefly shared one the first night when Dash gave in to the bet, but had not since. Thus Trixie intended to make the absolute most out of this one, pouring all of her passion into it. Since Dash was trapped on the ground, it was up to Trixie to decide when to end the kiss, which naturally was only once her lungs were burning from a wholly different kind of fire. Involuntarily breaking away for air, Trixie noticed to her mild annoyance that Dash, once again, did not even appear winded, but at least she was blushing as heavily as Trixie was. How does she do that? She can't have that much air. The thought only occupied her mind for a split second though, as there was something much more important she had to get out while she was still feeling courageous enough. She stared into Dash's eyes, admiring their sparkling beauty in the sunlight. Already feeling her nerves playing up, she quickly gathered just enough air to whisper, "Dashie, Trixie loves you." A look of surprise passed briefly over Dash's face, which clearly it had less to do with the fact Trixie loved her, than with Trixie actually saying it. Smiling up at Trixie, Dash replied as mushy as she would allow herself to be. "I know." Trixie knew it was as good as she was going to get, and she'd happily take it. Rolling her eyes, she rested her head down on Dash's chest. Listening to the racing rhythm that joined the music already in the air as a result, Trixie smiled. "You are the worst at this." Finally, Dash moved her hooves out from under her head, wrapping them around Trixie instead, holding her close to her chest as she spoke. "I know." Held tightly in Dash's embrace, Trixie closed her eyes. If she had the power, she'd make the moment last forever. Above, the sun's warmth shone down upon them, drying their soaked fur. Below, Rainbow Dash's warmth radiated through Trixie. She settled in comfortably while she listened to the greatest possible sound, a standing ovation from within Dash. "This is the best." Chapter 92. Recompense. The sun was already nearing the horizon, casting a warm hue over Equestria. Soaring through the sky, Trixie glanced down at the tiny dot that was Ponyville. Flying with Rainbow Dash was soothing, as though it put everything into perfect perspective. The world was so tiny in comparison to Dash. Nothing was quite as liberating as the feeling of being held tight by her beloved while the wind rushed through her mane. As far as Trixie was concerned, it was the perfect way to end their date. There was only one tiny little problem: it really was the end of their date. Originally, the plan had been to walk back home, but their date had run long, prompting Dash to suggest they could pick up the pace from romantic stroll to death-defying sprint in order to get Trixie home before dark. Trixie wasn't sure why they apparently had a curfew, but it seemed important to Dash. Thankfully, Trixie had a much better idea, and just enough magic to pull off floating their baggage behind them. Giving Dash a mid-flight nuzzle, Trixie let her eyes wander toward the fiery evening sky. With a smile, she noted that some of the colors matched up to Dash's mane. Unfortunately, she couldn't enjoy the view for long, as something a lot less soothing caught her eye. Trixie bit her lip and hoped that the flickering in her aura was just some kind of optical illusion. They were far too high above ground for the spell to fail them now. Dashie, land. "We're not at sea, Trixie, of course there's land." Trixie would have clarified, if she couldn't hear Dash sniggering to herself. Despite that, Dash did actually launch into a dive towards the ground at top speed. Dash ensured a quick landing for the both of them, and Trixie managed a controlled fall for the luggage. Dash looked over her shoulder towards the crashing sounds. "Oh, so that's why. I thought you said you were great and powerful enough to hover them till we got back." She grinned impishly while she let go of Trixie, dropping her on her back in the grass with a thump. Glaring up at Dash from the ground, Trixie folded her hooves below her head, mimicking the careless pose Dash had held before. Trixie did a mock impression of Dash's voice. "I'm the fastest Pegasus ever. I'll get us back in 10 seconds flat." "Hey. I sound at least 20% cooler than that." Dash yelled over her shoulder while she inspected the crash-landed basket. "Man, I'm definitely not getting my security deposit back." Up until now, Trixie had idly wondered why Dash even had a picnic basket. It didn't seem like the kind of thing she'd own. Apparently that was right. Oh. Trixie mumbled, folding her ears back. Sorry. One more thing to add to the list of reasons Trixie had at this point to find some kind of way to make an income. Perhaps she could check if there was a reward being offered for her apprehension yet. Keeping her back turned to Trixie, Dash stayed oddly quiet for a moment while she stared at the basket. It's fine, I guess. I should have known. She didn't finish, but simply sighed. Sitting up, Trixie couldn't help but cringe at the words. So sorry. She slumped over, looking down at her hooves, dejected. Just a little bit longer. If only she could have gone without screwing up 5 more minutes, the entire date would have been a grand success, but of course she just had to go and exhaust herself on levitating half the leg for no good reason. Dash hadn't even looked impressed with her display of magic prowess at the time. Why would she? She had a friend that could have lifted the entire lake. Stupid Trixie. Too busy berating herself, Trixie had not even noticed Dash's approach until she sat down beside her, and wrapped a hoof around her shoulders. Hey, you're not falling asleep on me, are you? Dash chuckled, but froze in the middle of it, her voice taking on a more genuine tone of concern. Trixie, you know you should tell me if you get tired, right? I guess it has been kind of a long day for you. Trixie blinked. Dash was smiling, a little too brightly even. Maybe she had not messed up too badly after all? Or perhaps this was Dash's way of giving Trixie an excuse for her failure. What? Yeah, yes, Trixie is a bit sleepy. Glancing towards the basket, Trixie shrunk a little as she posed her question, not entirely sure she wanted the answer. Aren't you mad? Trixie broke it. Although Dash only paused for a second or two, Trixie felt as though the silence lasted forever. A little bit, yeah. Dash sighed, shaking her head. I'm trying, you know. Not to, I mean. It's not your fault. I just... She fumbled her words, instead deciding to pull Trixie against her. That had been surprisingly honest, if a bit disjointed. Stunned, Trixie wasn't quite sure how to react. Now that she thought about it, when was the last time Dash got truly mad at her? Sure, they'd had their little arguments, but Dash had been a lot less fierce with her the past week, ever since the hospital. Has she been taking classes or something? That didn't seem likely to Trixie, but Dash was definitely trying. Unable to think of anything good to say, Trixie followed Dash's example, and slid her hooves around her, resting her head on the mare's shoulder. Dash relaxed some when Trixie returned the embrace, giving a smaller, though actually genuine, smile. So, hey, I just remembered I forgot to give you the second surprise. No pony was ever going to accuse Dash of being subtle. That had to be the most forced topic change in recorded history. Giggling lightly with the absurd change, Trixie shook her head, about as eager as Dash to get on with it. It was the, Pony Tunes, wasn't it? Pony Tunes. But nah, that wasn't it, Dash said as she got up and trotted to the basket, rummaging through it before she pulled out a small, colorful square paper. Here, this is for you. Grasping it with her magic, Trixie floated the square towards her. Apparently it was a photograph of Dash, Fluttershy, and Trixie herself, all sitting together on the couch with a few bowls of snacks near them, laughing about something. Her lips curled into a smile while Trixie observed the image. It must have been taken during their sleepover party. Wait, how did you take this picture? Dash wore a steadily spreading grin as she watched Trixie figure out the problem. Remember when you asked for proof that Pinkie Pie is not an old mare's tale? You're looking at it. She took it, and, confronted me about not inviting her. Apparently Twilight had a sleepover at her place too, and they didn't invite Pinkie either. She claims she had the bestest ever sleepover with Gummy, Winona, and Adolescence, instead though. Catching Trixie's confused expression, Dash elaborated. They're pets. Tilting her head, Trixie stared at Dash uncomprehendingly, then looked back at the picture. That's really, really creepy. Whatever this Pinkie Pie really was, it was now high on her list of successful ghost stories that Dash had told her. You know, normal ponies would have just introduced her to Trixie, not bring photographic evidence. Trixie was not entirely sure if it could really be called that if the picture was not of the pony in question. Oh. You would have been okay with that? Dash sounded genuinely surprised. Why didn't you say so? I thought you didn't want any pony to know you were here. Ah, that's true. Though, from the looks of it, she is already aware of Trixie. Besides, Trixie has been meeting a lot of ponies lately anyway, most of which without incident. Cringing, she recalled her trouble with Derby and Inky, but also a much happier bit of news. Oh, that reminds Trixie. Applejack invited us for dinner sometime this week, to meet her family. Dash perked up. Sweet. I'll get that worked out next time I see AJ then. But, you aren't going to show off any more lasso tricks, right? If you are though, at least make sure I can watch. She grinned whitely. Ha, Trixie will remember that. She floated the picture into her saddlebags. As eerie as its origin might have been, she did really like the idea of having a photo of her friends. Besides, this had to count as the first real gift she'd ever gotten from Dash, right? That made it extra special. In fact, it was special enough to be kept in her hat. The gleeful thought lingered a moment. Before she got a reality check, she didn't have her hat anymore. Looking at the horizon, Rainbow Dash shifted in place anxiously. I guess we should get going. I wanna be back before dark. Trixie raised a brow. What, you're afraid of the dark now? Still, she obliged and got ready to take off again, levitating her saddlebags onto her back with a grumble. Better not risk it for now. Don't be ridiculous. Despite the protest, Dash set out on the dirt road as soon as Trixie was ready. Looking left and right along the edge of the forest. I just don't want to get caught out here by the headless horse. It dwells in the woods, but sometimes strays outside when it is attracted to the light of the setting sun. Just like this one. Yes, Trixie gets it. Very nice. She picked up her pace to keep up with Dash. It was blindingly obvious Dash didn't believe the story, all the more because she did not show the signs of someone scared of getting jumped. Like her eyes were not darting around at every minor noise. Why don't you just tell Trixie what is really going on? Isn't that what you're trying to teach Trixie? Dash held a steady trot once Trixie had caught up to her, and glanced towards her uncertainly. I guess I had that coming. Fine. I'm supposed to bring the basket back before dark. If I don't, something terrible is going to happen. Trixie rolled her eyes. Yes. Of course it will. Fine, don't tell Trixie. It's true. If I bring it back late, damaged, and wet, that's 3 strikes. Dash had a surprising amount of actual panic in her voice, almost as if she actually believed what she was saying. Up ahead at the end of the path, Trixie could see the warm glow of the hearth shine through the windows. Fluttershy was probably cooking something up for dinner. Since they were almost there anyway, she stopped. All right, this will do. Trixie can make it home from here. She let her horn blow, catching Dash by the tail to stop her from running off. What? But, we're not there yet. Come on, hurry. Dash tried to pull her tail free. Relinquishing her magic, Trixie shook her head. Absolutely not. Trixie sees where this is going. If you are in such a hurry you'll leave the second we get to the door. So. Trixie would, rather spend the time more wisely. Her cheeks burned as she looked towards the horizon. Those familiar colors were still there. What do you mean? Dash came up beside Trixie, looking puzzled as she stared at the setting sun with dread. You know. Trixie wants to say goodnight, and then you can leave to return the basket, so you save time. Obviously she wasn't getting through to Dash very well, so she rephrased. Properly say goodnight. Just to make sure there couldn't be a misunderstanding, she swished her tail affectionately against Dash's own. Oh, I see. That's a good idea. Dash smiled as she turned to Trixie. Have a good night, Trixie. Immediately after, she turned away. Spreading out her wings, Dash got ready to take flight back the way they came. Trixie just wanted to turn the accursed mare's hair pink and blue right there. Oh, for Luna's sake. Get back here, and kiss Trixie, right now. You insufferable cur. Umpiv. Before Trixie could finish her rant, she was interrupted by wish-granting Rainbow Dash, who looked incredibly pleased with herself. As she tricked Trixie. Stupid, silly, sexy. Trixie lost her train of thought somewhere in the process as they held a kiss, embracing one another for a final time that evening. As far as Trixie was concerned, she could have stayed like this for hours, and it took every bit of her willpower to force herself to break away early. The surprised, craving look on Dash's face was well worth the trouble. Good night, Dashy. But, already? I mean, yeah. Gee, good night, Trixie. I better get going quick. She blushed heavily while she bolted straight up into the sky, leaving only a rainbow streak behind. Trixie grinned while she watched Dash fly off. Second rule of showmanship, always leave them wanting more. Rainbow Dash soared over Ponyville, picnic basket and hoof. A glance at the last rays of sunlight told her that she only had a little bit of time left, or else she was going to face the worst punishment imaginable. Finally, her destination came into view, and she swooped down as fast as she could. Skidding to a halt before a far too ornate door, she quickly tapped her hoof against it. I'm here. Totally on time and everything. On the other side of the door Dash could hear machinery at work, no doubt in the process of constructing the instrument of her demise. She knocked again, harder. Open up. The noise stopped, replaced by rapid hoof steps that quickly became louder, followed by a smooth metallic scrape of a latch. A light chime of a bell rung through the air as the door opened. So good to see you made it, darling. Come in, come in. You simply must tell me everything. Rarity beamed, far too giddy for Rainbow Dash's liking. Following Rarity inside, Dash looked around, spotting the infernal sewing machine. It made Rainbow Dash nervous just being here, but she supposed she might as well get the worst out of the way quick. Rarity, I kinda, maybe, through no fault of my own, broke the picnic basket you lent me. She knew exactly where she was being led, an admittedly cozy corner of the room that held a small round table flanked by 2 couches along the walls. Rarity, for her part, was far too busy with removing what she called inspiration from her tea corner, though to Dash it looked more like whatever random fabric she'd thrown in the general direction at the time. What was that, Rainbow Dash? Just one moment, please. Oh, and do sit down. A blue glow surrounded her tea set, setting everything up in rather impressive time. I said, the basket broke. Dash repeated while she sat down on the couch furthest away from the sewing machine. It also meant she could keep an eye on the thing, though really, it was probably the least of her worries given where she was. Even though she was technically very comfortable on the couch, Dash had a hard time relaxing. What? Oh, that old thing? Please, Rainbow, you know I wouldn't blame you for that. Rarity smiled while she got herself comfortable on the opposite couch, pouring them both a cup of tea in the meantime. Detecting a glimmer of hope, Dash sat up straight. Maybe she could get out of this yet. You don't? So, does that mean I don't have to, you know, be my mannequin for the creation of a new line of ballwear for aristocrats? Rarity finished for her, levitating a cup and saucer to her lap. Is that what you were curious about? Yeah, I don't have to do that then. Right. Rarity? Dash tried to keep the cup and saucer steady, which hadn't gotten any easier since the last time she was here. Well, I'm sorry, darling, but I don't recall quite saying that. Why, I would be absolutely lost if it wasn't for your wonderful offer to assist me. She smiled pleasantly, and looked over at the broken basket for a moment. It's just such a shame you made it back on time. I would have loved to see you model some new designs in public to get an accurate assessment. She brought her own cup to her lips, peering over it at Dash like a cat to a mouse. Oh, well. Now. Why don't you tell me all about how your date went? Dash had never made any such offer. It had been part of the deal forgetting to borrow the picnic basket that she brought it back whole, or she'd be a live model. From the way Rarity spoke, it was almost as if she anticipated the basket would inevitably be broken at some point. I don't know what you are talking about. I've not been on any date. Rarity gave an exasperated sigh. Yes, of course, darling. I meant to say. How did your friend's date go? You know, the one who asked you to ask for courting advice? I am just positively dying to know how it turned out for this love-struck pony. She never looked away as she spoke, making it painfully clear she was not, and never was, in the least bit buying this I have a friend business. So she's not love-struck. Trying to stall for time, Dash sipped her tea. Cinnamon-flavored, one of her favorites, surprisingly sweet at that. She's definitely pulling out all the stops, huh? She knew just what to lead with that would give Rarity what she was looking for, though Dash kept her eyes on her tea as she spoke. Well. You were right, okay. She told me, that the pony she went to meet had put a lot of effort into making herself pretty. She really felt like a mule for refusing your offer. A horrified gasp from across the table drew Dash's attention back to Rarity, who looked taken aback. Oh, Rainbow, I am so sorry. That must have been just awful. But perhaps she will consider a makeover, just a small one, the next time. Dash gave Rarity a wary look. She still vividly remembered haunting images of all kinds of utterly ridiculous mane styles that would have doubled her wind resistance. Though what surprised her most were the final few words. The next time? With an altered pleased, knowing look, Rarity reclined in her seat. Of course, darling, no pony whose friend came to me has ever not gotten a second date. She let her eyes roam over Dash, then to the empty basket. With your figure, I doubt you're a comfort eater. Besides, ponies whose dates go bad don't hop in on the deadline. It was a scary yet at the same time comforting thing to have Rarity on her side. You mean friends of ponies, right? Rarity's smile grew. Of course, darling. Chapter 93. Relish. Fluttershy, Trixie's home. Trixie called out as she stepped over the threshold, dropping her saddlebags near the door. She couldn't wait to tell Fluttershy all about her day, but she stopped in her tracks when she saw just how many animals had gathered inside the house, even for Fluttershy. Strewn along the floor and the couch, fast asleep, was a mishmash pack of ferrets, bunnies, mice, beavers, and altogether too many more kinds of animals for Trixie to care about identifying. Her eyes were drawn to the awake rabbit sitting right at the very top of the heap. She had recognized that accusing stare anywhere. Angel. What is going here? Trixie demands to know. Where is Fluttershy? Naturally, all she got back was the smallest raspberry she'd ever been insulted with. Trixie is not sure what she was expecting. She grumbled, idly wondering how she could make rabbit stew look like an accident. A familiar spot of yellow below the animals occupying the couch drew Trixie's attention. She let a grin spread over her face, looking at Angel again. Trixie almost forgot. Setting her horn ablaze with magic, she lifted the blasted rabbit up in the air. She can do this now. One by one, she lifted the animals off the couch, and laid them somewhere on the floor, each new levitation revealing a little more of the creamy Pegasus hidden underneath. The only creature Trixie did not put down was Angel, who was having a very animated, and one-sided, conversation with her. Sorry, Trixie doesn't speak rat. With the couch cleared sufficiently to make room for Trixie, she got herself a spot next to Fluttershy. She had planned on giving a gentle nudge to wake her up, but stayed her hoof. Maybe, she didn't need to wake her up just yet. Fluttershy looked much too adorable while she slept. There's no rush, is there? Relaxing beside Fluttershy, Trixie leaned against her a little to make up for the warmth of the animals she'd removed. Since the fire was still burning, Trixie deduced this nap couldn't have lasted all that long, but at least long enough to miss that it had been time to cook. Ugh, Trixie does not look forward to getting up to make dinner. Oh wait. Trixie briefly looked up at her horn with a grin. She was so used to working with just her hooves now, that she'd nearly fallen back into the old manual routine. Ha, the great and powerful Trixie is above manual labor at last. With building excitement, she levitated a log into the hearth, dropping it hard enough to make the flame give a brief roar while she extended a hoof toward the ceiling dramatically. Inadvertently, she found herself pointing at a struggling, and still presumably swearing, rabbit, floating near the ceiling. Oh, right. Against her better judgment, she brought Angel back the ground. It would not look good if Fluttershy woke to the view of Trixie holding her pet aloft. Unnervingly, Angel just stared at her with malice in his beady eyes, before hopping off. Trixie assumed he must have been trying to give her a death glare, but he always looked at her like that, so she couldn't tell the difference. This is going to bite Trixie in the flank one day, isn't it? Trixie shook her head, clearing her mind. It was a ridiculous thing to be concerned about. She was a unicorn, he was a rabbit. There was nothing he could do, short of leading Ponyville to her. Trixie briefly dreaded the thought, but it didn't seem likely he'd do anything that would endanger Fluttershy, if what Dash had told her was true. Despite being an annoying, possessive pest, he was also quite protective of his owner. It was just too bad that he had decided Fluttershy needed to be protected from Trixie. With the most pressing distraction out of the way, Trixie gleefully worked her magic to deck the table, boil water over the fire, and cook something quick for dinner. Her determination not to move hit a brief snag when it occurred to her that all the actual food was in the kitchen, which she could not see into from where she was. However, being ever resourceful and cunning, she hit upon the idea of positioning a mirror against the doorframe, enabling her to lay eyes on the cabinets, and a second mirror to be able to see what to take out. All in all, it was probably a much more exhausting task than actually getting up and walking over there, as it spread her magic woefully thin. It was already increasingly difficult to grasp objects the further away they were, let alone while simultaneously pulling some mind-warping shenanigans with mirrors. With sweat running down her face from the exertion, and a thumping headache for her troubles, Trixie watched the vegetable stew, boiling away happily over the flames. Trixie is triumphant. She could put the complicated magic to rest now, and settle down to simply skinning and cutting up the last few ingredients at her own leisure. Trixie gave a soft sigh of bliss, satisfied at her job well done. A feeling of contentment embraced her body, along with something else oddly enough. Blinking in surprise, Trixie noticed Fluttershy sliding her hooves around her and pulling in close, nuzzling her coat. Fluttershy? Him, what? Fluttershy drowsily replied, letting her head rest on Trixie's back. Her first attempt at opening her eyes was followed only by blinking against the light of the fire, then closing them tightly again. She inhaled deeply, a soft smile playing across her lips. MHN, Ratatouille, Nana. Trixie had to fight the urge to hug Fluttershy tight. She's so cute when she's sleepy. She settled for just giving her mane a stroke. Not quite, but Trixie will see what she can do, Fluttershy. Teeth Trixie? Fluttershy's eyes shot wide open, staring up at her for a brief moment, before she noticed she had her hooves wrapped around the unicorn and quickly let go, shuffling away. So sorry. I thought you were out. Oh, of the house I mean, not sleeping. I wouldn't just touch you while you sleep, you unless you had to be moved, or... Fluttershy, first of all, Trixie understands. Second, it doesn't matter, Trixie does not mind you touching her anyway. She said this in as reassuring a tone as she could, only to feel her cheeks heat up when she realized how easily that could be misconstrued. Still, she felt there was no need to clarify, Fluttershy wasn't like that. More importantly, what on earth happened here? Trixie had to excavate you from a mountain of critters. Fluttershy took a keen interest in the pot over the fire. She didn't even look at Trixie as she spoke. I don't really know. I'd run out of things to do, and, well, I thought maybe I'd just have a quiet moment to myself. She trailed off and looked down at her hooves, fidgeting uncomfortably. Just, relaxing. Then Angel wanted a massage. It was not entirely clear to Trixie how this current situation was explained by this, but she knew to let Fluttershy work through it at her own pace. She would just have to be patient. Fortunately, she had something to keep her busy, stirring up the stew. After he was satisfied, he hopped off, and I thought I could, relax some more. But then he came back with Mr. Beaverton, who wanted one too, and after Sally was already waiting, and it just kept going. Until... well... this. She motioned around the room. Just about every stray animal in the vicinity was asleep there. Now that Trixie took a closer look, they all seemed very relaxed. Huh? Trixie didn't know you could do massages, Fluttershy. It seems yours are very popular. Though Trixie had to wonder if Fluttershy's hooves didn't ache after all that. By the sound of it, she pretty much dozed off after overworking herself. Stupid Angel, stealing away the only moment Fluttershy had all to herself. And for what? Working her to death as a masseuse? If Trixie had her way, shish. Huh? From the corner of her eye, Trixie saw Fluttershy look over at her, but as soon as Trixie turned around, expecting Fluttershy to speak, she immediately looked away again. Weird. Maybe Trixie imagined it? I guess so. It's nothing special. I did a course on physical therapy, back in Cloudsdale, and I've just had a lot of practice with it since. Fluttershy actually spoke a little bit louder than usual, and Trixie could swear she detected a hint of actual pride buried below all that humility. Trixie will have to remember to ask you for a treatment someday then, but first we better get you something to eat. By the looks of things you must be starving after all that. As she spoke, Trixie filled up a bowl and held it hovering in the air before Fluttershy. Trixie had a big lunch, she can wait. Besides, Trixie has so much to tell you. Fluttershy pulled the bowl towards her, taking in the scent with a nostalgic smile on her face. Suddenly, a realization struck her like thunder. Fluttershy looked up at Trixie, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Magic. Your magic is back. That's wonderful. Oh, I was so worried you'd be disappointed. Even though her cheering was barely at the volume a regular pony would speak at, the enthusiasm in her voice was palpable. Grinning widely, Trixie nodded. It was great to see Fluttershy so excited. It was rare enough of a sight to begin with, and it felt amazing to know she was the cause. With a flourish, Trixie sent out a small fireworks spell to accompany her. Was there ever any doubt? Trixie is every bit as magnificent as she always was. Oh, my. Does that mean you are all better, already? Fluttershy looked doubtful, clearly aware that Trixie may have bent the truth just a tiny bit for the sake of creating a dramatic effect. Turning it down a bit, Trixie remembered what it would mean when she was fully recovered, and scraped her hoof along the cushions. Perhaps Trixie was a little hasty. She cannot use her high-level spells yet, and Trixie gets a headache if she uses her basic magic too much. So she assumes. Trixie most certainly did not foolishly try to levitate half a leg for an hour. And what even gave you that impression? I didn't say anything. Fluttershy shrunk back just slightly, but visibly relaxed again soon after. Turning her attention to the stew, she blew the wisps of hot vapor off it. Oh, never mind then. Trixie chuckled sheepishly. Anyway, Trixie has been waiting to tell you. Did you know Dash fancies herself a secret romantic? Trixie never would have thought. She had the whole date planned out. Trixie was amazed she only screwed up twice. Laughing, Trixie noticed Fluttershy tensed up visibly, and busily blew at her stew again. Going over what she just said, Trixie realized she was mocking Fluttershy's best friend. Trixie winced and reined herself in, dropping to a more modest tone while she rubbed along the fetlocks of her hoofs nervously. Trixie didn't mean to say Dash was a fool. It was actually really thoughtful. She took Trixie on a nice peaceful stroll through the woods, away from the town, and she was so nice to Trixie. Her cheeks burned as she told the story. It was even now hard to believe it actually happened. That's nice. Fluttershy mumbled quietly, staring into her bowl. Trixie folded her ears flat as she heard Fluttershy's response. The difference was subtle, but her voice was not quite as warm as it usually was. D-Dash took Trixie to a lake. It seemed wise to skip over the accidental rain part of the story. Fluttershy might think she was still bad-mouthing Dash. She had a whole picnic prepared, just waiting for us. Dash even had Trixie's favorite snacks. Trixie doesn't know how she found out, but it was the best Trixie ever tasted. Oh, and she somehow got this band of singers to sing songs while we were there. Trixie stared off into the distance as she recalled it, how Dash had thought of it all she'd never understand. We spent the rest of the day there, talking about all sorts of things. Despite Trixie's efforts, Fluttershy still seemed disquietingly on edge. That's good. She blew on the stew again, and, seemingly satisfied, tasted a bite. It was making Trixie nervous. She hadn't meant to offend Fluttershy. Originally she had thought Fluttershy would have been excited enough by this point that Trixie could get into some of the more juicy details, but clearly her opening had been terrible. She needed a bit more time to think of how to salvage this. Scooping out a bowl of soup for herself, Trixie simultaneously took the pot off of the fire to avoid any risk of burning it. Magic is really useful, isn't it? Fluttershy sounded a little bit better, much to Trixie's relief. The question took Trixie off guard, but Fluttershy sounded more like her old self, so she was happy to answer. It is. Trixie is glad to have it back. Any longer and she may have gone insane. Though, can you keep a secret? There are some annoying drawbacks to it. Trixie tilted her bowl a little to allow Fluttershy to look within. She had scooped too shallowly, and only managed to get herself a vegetable soup, rather than stew. Magic just does what you make it do, but you can't really tell what level of resistance it's encountering very well, unless it's something easy like being blocked entirely. Which means it's hard to tell if you are scooping thick stew, or just tasty water. Giggling, Trixie shook her head while she held the bowl straight in her hooves again. It's not a problem if you can see what you're doing, of course. Oh, I didn't know that. Fluttershy perked up and scooted a bit closer, leaning in to look into Trixie's bowl. Does that mean it's like feeling numb? She asked tentatively. Pleased to see Fluttershy getting more comfortable, Trixie quickly nodded. Yes, that's a good way to put it, Fluttershy. It was fun to finally get to talk about magic, and provide some real-world examples in the process. They really hadn't talked about it much before, so Fluttershy's interest surprised Trixie. It occurred to her that Fluttershy had likely avoided the topic while her magic was still on the fritz, to avoid hurting her feelings. It is why most unicorns require direct line of sight with the object they want to manipulate, but it is ultimately a limitation of the unicorn, not magic itself. For example, Trixie can use mirrors to direct her magic. That is harder than it sounds, because it's not like bouncing a beam off mirrors. In fact, Trixie continued her impromptu lecture, levitating one of the mirrors towards her to assist in the explanation. As she was not being interrupted, Trixie assumed it was all clear to Fluttershy as she went on. Trixie was so caught up in her description of the theory and everyday application in her show of indirect manipulation, that she didn't notice Fluttershy had gone oddly quiet. It wasn't until she heard a strange sound that she thought to investigate, in between demonstrations. Fluttershy was much closer to her now, and sniffing her mane. Trixie rapidly lost her train of thought. So teleportation. 2. Impossible. Fluttershy? She wasn't sure what was going on with the team at Pegasus. Everything about her seemed a little bit off tonight. With a surprised squeak, Fluttershy looked up at Trixie, her muzzle still nearly nestled in her mane. Her cheeks burned crimson as she quickly sat up straight, nearly head-butting Trixie in the chin as she went. Yes. She very briefly made eye contact with Trixie, then brought her attention back to her own bowl and quickly ate a few bites, conveniently allowing her mane to fall between them. Trixie tilted her head, unsure what to make of this situation. Fluttershy isn't usually quite so clingy, but she didn't appear to do it entirely consciously. One option came to mind as a possible explanation for the strange stolen glances and attempts to get nearer, was that Fluttershy had finally snapped and completely surrendered to Trixie's natural charm after she'd seen just how glorious her magic was. As much fun as Trixie could have with the thought, she quickly dismissed it. She had already learned her lesson the first time. It actually made her feel a little proud of herself. Wait. How long has Trixie been watching Fluttershy eat in complete silence? About a minute or more? Clearing her throat, Trixie decided that maybe she was not in a good state of mind to be thinking about this. After all, she was tired, not to mention in the mood, from spending the best day ever with Dash, and perhaps just a bit from abusing her magic. Even a genius-level intellect like her own could make bad decisions under those circumstances. Sorry, Trixie zoned out. It's been a long day. For both of us by the sound of it. Yes. Fluttershy replied softly. Her attention remained firmly on her bowl. Another short answer. Trixie did not like this at all. Fluttershy was her precious friend. They lived in the same house, and slept in the same bed. They'd been happily chatting a minute ago. Why was she being so different now? Trixie felt her chest ache dully. This talk was something she had looked forward to, but Fluttershy had been so distant ever since Trixie insulted Rainbow Dash. What does she want Trixie to do? Trixie already apologized, and said good things about her. This isn't fair. Taking a deep breath, Trixie tried to relax. Fluttershy was sure to have a reason for the way she acted. Perhaps Trixie had simply missed a hint of some sort. What was it that Fluttershy talked about before she changed? Something about that evil bunny. Yes, he wanted a massage, and then demanded she did the same for the other animals. Trixie frowned. There was definitely something wrong with that story. That doesn't sound right. Angel is a jealous little furball, who kicks a fuss if anything threatens his position as official pet. There's no way he'd demand other animals get the same treatment he does. Angel Bunny was a terror as far as Trixie was concerned, but she had spent enough time around the little Tartarus spawn to know there was method to his madness. She knew he was demanding, but also protective of Fluttershy, and more than a little possessive. So why would he make her do more work? Was the massage not good enough, and he wanted her to practice? A brief look around the room allowed Trixie to put the possibility to bed. The animals all looked like it was great. Trixie can rule out possessiveness, so that just leaves protection. Protection from what? Having no work? Trixie did her best not to laugh out loud. Fluttershy said she was relaxing, then Angel came and gave her more work, and brought all these animals. By Luna, that must have taken her forever. This struck Trixie as significant. Fluttershy? How long does the massage session last? Trixie smiled as she saw Fluttershy peek around her mane with a confused look. About 10 minutes, sometimes longer. Blinking slowly, Trixie looked around the room again, making a quick estimate of the number of snoozing animals and multiplied, then did it again because it couldn't be right. What? There's no way. Even together, Trixie and Fluttershy did not usually finish the chores with enough time left to spare to blow a couple of hours before dinner time. Granted, they were never in any hurry, and often took little breaks to talk. have tea, or just relax a moment in general. The more Trixie thought about it, the more she realized it might be possible if Fluttershy worked continuously, but then she'd literally been working all day. No wonder she fell asleep. Folding her ears back, Trixie stared down into her own bowl. Trixie is sorry. What? For what? I mean. Trixie didn't pay attention. You were so tired, and Trixie didn't even notice. She just kept talking, but she should have just let you rest, right? Sorry. It's just Trixie was really excited. Some friend she was, perhaps she was wrong to pull the animals off her as well. Angel had tried to stop her. Oh, no, that's no. It's okay. I'm sorry too. Fluttershy hid behind her mane, speaking even quieter than usual. I should have told you. Sorry. Trixie's glad to see she's not the only one that struggles with that sometimes. Smiling, she brushed her mane out of her face. Let's just go to bed. As she suggested it, Trixie shifted, ready to get up, until she felt a hoof on her foreleg. Wait. Fluttershy pulled her hoof back. I'm not done so. I guess you can talk some more, if that's okay with you. She motioned down at her bowl. Suddenly her eyes went wide. Oh, and it tastes really good. Thank you. I'm sorry. I forgot to say so before. Oh, please don't be upset. Just like that, Fluttershy had returned. Giggling, Trixie shook her head. Trixie will overlook your wickedness just this once, Fluttershy. You did come up with an excellent idea after all. Trixie will provide dinner and a show. Oh, my. A whole show? I better eat slowly then. Fluttershy wore a smile that Trixie could detect just a hint of mischief in. Trixie kicked off her story by a tale of horror of what she had to go through in the hospital, and of her magic show for Dinky, though she left out the part of what happened afterwards, figuring it was not the kind of story she wanted to tell before bed. After that, Trixie made sure to tell Fluttershy how helpful the bits she had given her had been, allowing her to afford a few beauty products. To demonstrate her new shampoo, Trixie originally planned to offer her mane to Fluttershy, but discovered the scent had rained out during one of the 2 deluges she'd suffered through. To compensate, she brought her saddlebags closer and let Fluttershy have a whiff of the strong blueberry scent from the bottle itself. While it was a little awkward to tell the story of why she had dropped half the lake on them, as part of explaining why the scent was gone, it did give Trixie a nice seg into the moment she got to share with Dash afterward, blushing heavily as she spoke. Meanwhile, Fluttershy was predictably hiding behind her mane, unable to make eye contact. However, something else did catch her eye. Angel? What are you? No, stop. Trixie's head whipped away from Fluttershy and to where she was staring. Looking in front of herself, Trixie just managed to catch Angel as he kicked her neglected, steaming soup up and into her face. It was pretty amazing to Trixie, as time seemed to stand still as she helplessly watched the fuming liquid inch towards her face. She even had time to blink once and get out a stray thought. Please, let Trixie not wake up from another coma. Trixie's world turned into nothing but burning. Collapsing onto the soft mattress, Trixie grumbled. Trixie is going to exterminate that little rat. Her face still ached. It was a dull kind of ache, but Trixie was just sure it was going to be difficult to fall asleep. At least she wasn't burned badly. If that cowardly rabbit had acted earlier she might not have been so lucky. Fluttershy whimpered, and scooted a bit further under the blankets as if trying to hide. Oh, please, Trixie. Don't be mad at him. He didn't mean any harm. I'm sure he didn't know it was hot. He most certainly did. It's lucky Trixie's bowl had been cooling this whole time or Trixie might have been seriously hurt. What is Trixie saying? It did hurt. By the time Trixie had been able to see again, Angel was nowhere to be found. Fluttershy had acted quickly and come to her rescue with a soaked towel to cool and clean Trixie's face. If there was ever the slightest doubt in Trixie's mind that Angel was pure evil, it was gone now. Though Trixie's brief search to find him ended up fruitless, she would bide her time. He couldn't hide forever. I know. I'm really sorry, Trixie. He's never done anything like that. I'll talk to him, I promise. Fluttershy apologized for what was probably the 100th time that evening. Though to be fair, Trixie had been threatening to end that rat for at least as many times. Letting out a deep sigh, Trixie laid down beside Fluttershy. See to it that you do. Trixie leaves it to you. She conceded, still seething with rage, but she did not want to continue having this conversation another hour. Trixie could feel Fluttershy shake lightly on her half of the bed while she curled up. Yeah, yes, I will. Sorry. Gee, good night, Trixie. Trixie's stomach seemed to twist in on itself. It wasn't really fair to keep yelling at Fluttershy for something that Angel had done. Taking a few deep breaths, Trixie waited for her pulse to steady, speaking only once she was sure she wouldn't sound angry. Fluttershy didn't deserve to have the last words she'd hear before sleeping to be coated with rage. Good night, Fluttershy. Sweet dreams. In a way, Fluttershy's exhausting schedule of the day was a good thing. Trixie was sure that Fluttershy would have laid awake for hours over this if her body had not demanded she'd sleep. Trixie herself, though, was left trying to spot new patterns in the grooves and knots of the ceiling. What occupied her mind most was what she might have done if she had not been blinded, but the more she thought about it, the more she was relieved that she had been. Rabbit's stew was not as pleasant a thought as it had been when she was still in pain. Fortunately, Trixie had more pleasant things she could think about. If she was lucky, she might even end up dreaming of them. The corners of her mouth curled into an involuntary smile as she recalled Rainbow Dash's response to her confession. I know, she chuckled. Can't she go a minute without trying to sound cooler? She's so cute. Feeling Fluttershy hook a hoof around her, Trixie froze and held her breath. Carefully, she tilted her head to peek at Fluttershy. To Trixie's surprise, Fluttershy was not awake. She simply snuggled up against Trixie in her sleep, nestling her nose in Trixie's mane. It was a little awkward. Trixie wasn't sure how she should respond. It didn't seem right to wake Fluttershy for this, as it wasn't as if Trixie didn't like it, but it felt a bit like taking advantage of her. If she likes to sleep like that, who is Trixie to argue? Besides, Fluttershy had a hard day, waking her up wouldn't be right. Yes, that's it. Trixie should just let her do as she likes. Gleefully pleased with her brilliant logic, Trixie heard Fluttershy breathing deeply, followed by a soft smacking sound. Glancing over, she felt her heart stop. Oh, no, not again. Her beautiful silver locks were trapped in Fluttershy's mouth. Thankfully spared of chewing, but it was a terrifying prospect. Waking her up wouldn't be right, huh? Great, well, who's taking advantage of her now? Trixie should have seen that coming. Oh, what the hey? Twisting onto her side, Trixie wrapped one hoof gingerly around Fluttershy, and closed her eyes. Let's call it even.